Ro was angry at the sun. At home, everything was gray. The air was solid and wet, and so he didn't mind so much when he was stuck inside all day at school because there was nowhere else to go. Might as well huddle up with his books or mess around in the halls with his mates and wait till the last minute to burst out the front door to catch the bus. He loved London and all the things that made Londoners expert whingers. The weather, the other 9 million people who bloody well should watch where they're going, how it was an inhumane place teeming with humanity. He loved emerging from those long escalators leading out of the tube stations and taking that first gulp of air, knowing that later, when he blew his nose, there'd be soot on the tissue. On the street, he loved walking with strangers, all of them hunched and nestled under large black umbrellas, hands jammed into their pockets. It reminded Ro that his place in the universe was small and insignificant. And that was a good thing, one's own insignificance. It meant that all the messing up everyone around him seemed to be doing lately didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Only the forward momentum of gray history, of those gray buildings still standing, of the gray rain forever falling, of even the gray Thames continuing to churn its sneaky way through his city. Los Angeles, on the other hand, or at least the little he had seen during the drive yesterday from the airport, was a blindingly bright landscape full of fast food joints and mini-malls and billboards advertising movies starring exceptionally jacked bald men. So this was America, he thought. Ro felt lost. He had no idea where he was, other than in the hallway of a random private school in the city of Los Angeles in the state of California, on the far west coast of the United States, following a swarm of students out the emergency exits, presumably because someone had pulled the fire alarm. He was walking with a pretty girl named Paige, who wore leather riding boots up to her knees, even though it was a balmy 31 degrees Celsius, and she seemed utterly unconcerned by the blaring electronic voice that kept repeating, "Fire, fire, fire." "Some kids here are rich jerks, but not everyone," she said, apropos of nothing. Or maybe he had missed a solid chunk of their conversation. That was entirely possible, given that they'd found themselves at the end of the hall, and he had no recollection of walking there. He smelled smoke suddenly, but for reasons he couldn't explain, it didn't frighten him. His brain filled with innocent explanations. A science experiment gone wrong. A cigarette not properly put out. He knew with uncharacteristic certainty he wasn't going to die today, and so he continued walking slowly, unworried, following the people in front of him. "Sorry?" He kept his tone light. It wasn't this random girl's fault he was knackered and jet-lagged and so filled with a volcanic rage that it took all his willpower not to punch one of those steel lockers. He really didn't have the energy for this crap. Later, when they stood outside and watched part of the East Wing burn, he'd wonder for a moment if maybe he had caused the fire somehow, inadvertently, without his knowledge, his anger manifested. Like in the movies when a misfit discovers they have a secret superpower. He went so far as to examine his fingertips for evidence of a flame. They, of course, turned out to be normal, boring fingertips. You know, the private jets, the Sweet 16s have like Grammy winners performing, Oscar swag bags. It's pretty gross, Paige said, and then swept her hand under her hair, picked it up into a large, undulating ponytail, and then dropped it again. She seemed to be performing in some way, like there might be a reality TV camera behind Ro's shoulder, capturing her every movement. "Oh, okay, right." Ro only recognized half of the words she'd spoken, but that was at least partly because he was only half listening. He'd been wondering why he had advanced theater on his schedule, given that he'd never taken a single theater class in his life, and how long it would be till he was outside, breathing fresh air. If things had been different, if he were here in this strange neon land of his own volition, if he hadn't been distracted by the smoke and the alarm, he'd maybe have tried to be charming. Paige was gorgeous, if a little fussily dressed, and he couldn't be sure, but it felt like she might be flirting with him.